My son betrayed me and then discovered I was the one signing his paychecks. I was 62 when my world collapsed. For decades, I poured my heart, soul, and every ounce of energy into raising my only son. I worked double shifts, skipped meals so he could eat, and sacrificed every dream I once had so he could chase his own. Like any mother, I believed my love would come back to me in the form of care, respect, and a little kindness when I grew old. But instead, one morning, my son walked into my kitchen and looked me straight in the eyes. His words were cold and sharp, words I never thought I'd hear from the boy I once cradled in my arms. "Mom, we don't need you anymore. It's time you move into a nursing home." At first, I thought he was joking. I laughed nervously and waited for him to smile, to tell me it was just a strange sense of humor, but he didn't. His face stayed serious, his voice firm. "You're too much responsibility now. It's better for everyone this way." Those words cut through me like a knife. A responsibility, after all the years of wiping his tears, holding his hand, and working myself to the bone to give him a future. Was that all I had become? A burden? The next day, he drove me out of town. We passed familiar streets, places where I had once taken him for ice cream, parks where he played Little League, and schools where I proudly cheered for him. Now those memories seemed to mock me as the car rolled toward the nursing home. When we arrived, he didn't even help carry my bag. He just parked, opened the trunk, and set it down beside me. I stood there, clutching my sweater tight, my heart pounding. He gave me a quick hug, the kind you'd give a stranger, and whispered, "This is for the best, Mom," and then he left. He didn't look back. He didn't see me standing there, trembling, fighting tears, as the heavy wooden doors of the nursing home opened to swallow me inside. That night, lying on a thin mattress in a room that smelled of disinfectant, I cried harder than I had since the day my husband died. My son, my pride, my joy, had abandoned me. I was alone. But what he didn't know was this: I was far from helpless. Behind the quiet life I lived, behind the small house and simple clothes, was a truth I had never shared with him. Years ago, after my husband's passing, I had built something of my own. With determination and long nights of planning, I started a business. Slowly it grew. Year by year it flourished, and eventually it became a multi-million-dollar company. One of the very companies my son now worked for, never realizing who truly stood at the top. That night in the nursing home, after the tears dried on my pillow, I reached for the phone. With one call, my driver and company staff were on their way. By morning, a black sedan pulled up at the nursing home's entrance. The staff watched in shock as I walked out with my head high, sliding into the back seat like the woman I had always been, not a burden but a boss. And that was just the beginning, because my son had no idea that the same company where he built his career and the same office he proudly boasted about to friends belonged to his old mother. And when I walked through those office doors again, greeted by my employees with respect and admiration, I knew exactly what I had to do. The betrayal burned too deep to ignore. He thought he could discard me like yesterday's news, but I wasn't done yet. The lesson he was about to learn would change his life forever. To him, I was just Mom. A woman past her prime, slowing down, no longer useful. He believed I had nothing left to give, that I was destined to fade quietly into old age while he moved forward in life. That's why one cold morning he drove me to a nursing home, telling me it was best for everyone. He didn't know the truth, because this 62-year-old grandma had a secret so big it could turn his entire world upside down. It wasn't something I wore on my face or carried in my hands. On the outside, I looked fragile, wrinkled skin, tired eyes, thinning hair, but behind that, hidden away from everyone, was the life I had built in silence. After my husband died decades earlier, I had been left with nothing but a small savings account, a mortgage, and a broken heart. My son was still young, and I had to find a way to survive, not just for me, but for him. I refused to let life defeat me. So I worked, I studied, I taught myself things people half my age struggled to learn. Every night, when my son was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with a pen, paper, and determination. I started small, investing the little money I had left, learning how businesses worked, how markets shifted, and how people thought. Slowly I grew. What began as selling homemade goods turned into managing a small shop. The shop grew into 2, then 3. Eventually, I built something larger, something real, a company. Piece by piece, year after year, I poured everything into it. While my son thought I was just mom, who cooked dinner and packed lunches, I was also a businesswoman, a fighter, and an owner. And that company thrived. By the time I turned 50, it was a multimillion-dollar enterprise, offices, employees, partnerships, all running under my watch, but I never told my son. Why? Maybe because I wanted him to find his own path, to work for what he earned and not to lean on me. Maybe I wanted him to see me as his mother, not his wallet, or maybe, deep down, I wanted to keep one part of myself private, something that was mine alone. So I lived quietly. I stayed in the same little house, drove the same old car, and wore the same comfortable clothes. My neighbors thought I was frugal. My son thought I was poor. No one ever guessed the truth. But the day he left me at that nursing home, I realized keeping the secret had come at a cost. He didn't respect me. He didn't see my worth. He looked at me as nothing more than an aging woman who had outlived her usefulness. As I sat in that sterile room, staring at the walls painted beige to hide the loneliness of the place, something inside me shifted. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't weak. I wasn't done. I picked up the phone. Within an hour, a black sedan pulled up to the nursing home. 2 of my company's staff walked in, their eyes wide with concern. "Mrs. Williams," one of them said softly, "we came as soon as we got your call." The other quickly packed my things. The nurses and residents stared as I walked out, escorted like a woman of importance, stepping into the sleek car that carried me away. The staff at the nursing home whispered among themselves, who was I, really? Why did a woman like me have people in suits rushing to her side? The mystery grew, but the truth was about to come out. When we reached the downtown office building, the doors opened automatically, and I walked in. My employees greeted me with respect, calling me ma'am and boss. Some even smiled warmly, relieved to see me, because I wasn't just anyone. I was the founder, the owner, the reason they had jobs and futures. And then, like a cruel twist of fate, I saw my son. He was there. He worked for the company, but he never knew the truth. To him, it was just another job. To me, it was my empire. That was the secret I had carried all those years. His ordinary old mother was the woman who built the very foundation he stood on. I stood in the lobby for a moment, watching him laugh with his colleagues, boasting about some small promotion he had earned. He didn't notice me at first. Why would he? He never looked for me anywhere beyond the kitchen or the living room of my old house. He never imagined I had a life outside of being his caretaker. When our eyes finally met, confusion filled his face, then shock, then fear. His smile faded and his voice cracked when he whispered, "Mom, what are you doing here?" I didn't answer right away. I wanted him to sit with the unease, the realization that he didn't know me at all, that the mother he thought he could discard like an old coat was standing here as the most powerful person in the room. I walked past him, my heels clicking against the marble floor, straight into my office, the glass walls, the heavy desk, the view of the city. It was all mine, and now he knew it too. The secret was out. And as he stood there, stunned, his world started to crumble, because the very mother he had abandoned wasn't a burden at all. She was the boss. She was the one who held his future in her hands, and I was finally ready to decide what to do with him. My son thought he had left me behind. At 62, he believed I was nothing more than a fragile old woman, slowing down with each passing year. That's why he drove me to a nursing home and told me it was for the best. In his mind, my chapter was over. But what he didn't know was that I carried a secret powerful enough to shake his entire world, because the mother he abandoned wasn't just a quiet widow with wrinkled hands and fading strength. I was the owner of a multi-million-dollar company, his company. The day after he left me at the home, I walked back into my office for the first time in months. My employees stood tall when they saw me, some clapping, some smiling, all acknowledging me with respect my own son never gave. Their voices echoed, "Welcome back, Mrs. Williams," but nothing compared to the look on my son's face when he spotted me walking through the glass doors of the headquarters. He froze, his jaw slack, his eyes darting around as if reality itself had betrayed him. Mom.
What are you doing here?
I didn't answer immediately. I let the silence hang heavy. I let him drown in confusion while the truth dawned on him. My driver took my coat. My secretary handed me papers to sign. My board members approached, nodding at me, calling me Madam Chairwoman. And then it hit him. The company he bragged about working for, the one he thought he was climbing through by his own effort, belonged to me. Every paycheck he cashed came from the empire I had built with my own hands. His face turned pale. He stammered, This can't be real. You own this place." I looked him straight in the eyes and finally spoke. "Yes, every wall, every desk, every paycheck, mine." "The same mother you threw away runs the life you're so proud of." The entire lobby went quiet. His coworkers, who had overheard, exchanged stunned glances. Some covered their mouths, others whispered to each other. Suddenly, the man who thought his mother was a burden looked very, very small. I walked past him without another word and headed into the boardroom. He followed, desperate, stumbling over his excuses. "Mom, I didn't know. I didn't mean to. You thought I was useless." I cut him off, my voice cold but steady. "You thought I had nothing left. You thought putting me in a nursing home was easier than giving me love. And now you see the truth." I sat at the head of the long mahogany table, surrounded by executives and advisors. My son lingered by the door like a guilty child, unsure if he should stay or flee. One of the board members cleared his throat. "Mrs. Williams, should we proceed with the staffing changes?" I looked directly at my son. His face was red, his hands trembling. This was the moment, the shocking twist he never imagined. The same mother he had abandoned had the power to end his career with a single word. "Yes," I said firmly, "let's proceed." They slid a folder across the table. His name was on the termination papers, his chair, his desk, his position. It was gone in seconds. He lunged forward, desperate. "Mom, please don't do this. I was wrong. I made a mistake. I'll make it right. Please just forgive me." His voice cracked, and for the first time in years I saw him look like the little boy I once held in my arms. But then I remembered the pain of that day, the car ride, the heavy doors of the nursing home, the way he walked away without looking back. I leaned forward, my hands pressed against the polished wood of the table. "You left me when I needed you most. You threw me away like I was nothing. And now you'll know how it feels to be discarded." The silence in the room was suffocating. His coworkers stared, stunned at the spectacle. My son dropped to his knees right there in the boardroom, begging me not to ruin him. But the decision had already been made. Security. I called calmly. 2 guards stepped in and gently but firmly took him by the arms. As they led him out, I could still hear his voice echoing down the hall. "Mom, please, I'm sorry." But I didn't chase after him. I didn't crumble like before. I sat tall in my chair, holding back the tears that threatened to rise, because this was no longer about revenge. It was about respect, about reminding him and myself that I was never weak, never a burden, never less. I was his mother. I was a survivor, and I was the owner of everything he had taken for granted. As the doors closed and the boardroom returned to order, one of the executives leaned toward me and whispered, "Mrs. Williams, that was the boldest thing I've ever witnessed." I smiled faintly, though my heart still ached. "Sometimes," I said softly, "a mother has to teach her son the hardest lesson of all." That day, the shocking truth was revealed, not just to my son, but to everyone who thought I was finished. I wasn't just a 62-year-old grandma left behind at a nursing home. I was the woman who built an empire, and no one, especially my own son, would ever forget it. For 36 years, my son believed he knew me. To him, I was simply Mom, the woman who packed his school lunches, clapped at his baseball games, and stitched the holes in his jeans late at night. He thought my entire world began and ended with him. But what he never knew was that, behind closed doors, I had built an empire, quietly, patiently, year after year. And when he drove me to that nursing home, treating me like a burden heavy to carry, he unknowingly abandoned the very woman who controlled his future. Because the company I owned, the multimillion-dollar business I had nurtured from the ground up, was the same company where he worked. The reveal came suddenly like a thunderclap. I still remember the moment vividly. My driver had picked me up from the nursing home after one phone call, and I walked through the glass doors of the company headquarters with my head held high. The lobby erupted into whispers. Employees rushed to greet me. Mrs. Williams, welcome back. Secretaries handed me folders, executives smiled nervously, and then I saw him, my son, my flesh and blood, standing by the front desk, holding his coffee cup, chatting with a colleague like it was any ordinary day. He didn't notice me at first. He didn't expect to see his mother here of all places. Why would he? To him, I was supposed to be sitting in a sterile room at the nursing home, invisible, forgotten. But when his eyes finally met mine, his smile vanished, confusion spread across his face, his hand trembled, and the coffee cup slipped slightly, spilling onto the floor. Mom, he whispered, his voice cracking. What are you doing here? I didn't answer immediately. I let him drown in the silence, let him watch as employees in sharp suits turned toward me with respect, as the receptionist hurried to open the elevator doors, and as my secretary handed me a stack of contracts. The truth hit him slowly, painfully. He looked around. Realizing how every pair of eyes was on me, not him, he saw how people treated me, not as someone frail, but as someone powerful. I finally spoke, my voice calm but sharp enough to cut the air. This company you work for, the one you boast about at every family dinner, the one you thought was just a job. I leaned closer, staring him directly in the eyes. It's mine, every inch of it, every dollar, every paycheck. Mine. His mouth opened, but no words came out. His colleague standing beside him muttered, She's the owner, she's your mother. The lobby filled with whispers like wildfire. Some gasped and some chuckled in disbelief. My son's face turned pale. He shook his head slowly as if trying to wake from a nightmare. No, this isn't real. This can't be real. You own this place. I didn't need to answer. My actions spoke louder than any words. The elevator doors closed behind me, my staff standing at my side, while my son remained frozen in the lobby, his entire world crumbling. Inside the boardroom, as I settled into the leather chair at the head of the table, I saw him stumble in, desperate for clarity. He looked like a child again, lost and afraid. Mom, please explain this to me. He begged. Why didn't you ever tell me? How could you keep something like this a secret? I stared at him for a long moment before answering. My voice was steady, but my heart ached, because, son, I wanted you to build your own life. I wanted you to find strength in yourself, not in my money. I wanted you to see me as your mother, not as a bank. He sank into a chair, his hands gripping his head. All this time, I thought you were just, ordinary. I thought I had to take care of you. That's why you abandoned me at a nursing home. I interrupted sharply. The room fell silent. The executives around the table lowered their eyes, uncomfortable with the truth being laid bare. He looked up at me, tears brimming in his eyes. I didn't mean it like that, Mom. I thought I was doing the right thing. You thought I was a burden. I finished for him, but now you see the truth. The burden wasn't me. It was your own arrogance. The weight of my words crushed him. He sat speechless, staring at the floor, his pride shattered. For the first time, he realized he didn't know me at all. The woman he had dismissed as weak was the same woman signing his paychecks. One of the board members broke silence. Mrs. Williams, shall we continue with the restructuring plan? I nodded slowly, keeping my eyes locked on my son. Yes. Let's continue. They slid a folder across the table. His name was on the list. Termination. The irony was brutal. The job he had taken for granted was slipping through his fingers, not because of bad performance, but because the mother he betrayed held the power. He leapt to his feet, panic flooding his voice. Mom, no, please don't do this. I'm your son, your only son. I made a mistake, but I can change. I can be better, just. Don't take this away from me. Tears streamed down his face. He fell to his knees, begging in front of the entire board. Some executives shifted uncomfortably. Others stared in shock. I stood slowly and deliberately and walked toward him. My heels clicked against the floor with the sound of finality.
I leaned down just enough so he could hear the truth that would haunt him forever. You left me when I needed you most.
Now I'm leaving you to learn what that feels like. The guard stepped forward at my signal and he was led out of the room. His cries echoed down the hall, but I didn't flinch. I returned to my seat, calm and steady, my heart heavy but resolute. Because the reveal was not just for him, it was for me. For every mother who had been cast aside, for every elder treated like a burden, for every woman underestimated because of her age. The truth had finally been spoken aloud. I wasn't just a 62-year-old grandmother. I wasn't weak. I wasn't done. I was the owner, and he would never forget it. I had seen my son fall to his knees that day in the boardroom, his voice breaking as he begged me to forgive him. For a moment, I almost saw the little boy I once held close, the child who used to run to me after scraping his knee, crying for comfort. But then, just as quickly, the memory of the nursing home returned, the way he drove me there without hesitation, the way he walked away without a backward glance, leaving me to feel discarded like an unwanted object. No, this wasn't the same little boy. This was a man who had forgotten where he came from, a man who believed his mother was a burden. And forgiveness was something he hadn't earned. The boardroom was silent as the guards led him away, his voice echoing down the hall, pleading for mercy. I sat down again, my hands folded in front of me, my heart pounding but my face calm. The executives watched me carefully, unsure if I would grumble or stand strong. I stood strong, because this moment wasn't just about me and my son. It was about every sacrifice I had ever made, every sleepless night, every meal I skipped so he could eat. It was about reminding myself and him that I was not disposable. Later that evening, he showed up at my house. His eyes were swollen, his clothes wrinkled. He had clearly been crying for hours. He dropped to his knees again on my porch, clutching at my hand. "Mom, please, I didn't mean it. I was wrong. I was selfish. Please, just give me another chance." I looked at him, my chest tightening with both anger and sorrow. Another chance? Tell me, son, would you have given me another chance if I begged you not to leave me in that nursing home? He had no answer. His lips trembled and his eyes darted to the ground. The truth was clear. He wouldn't have. I pulled my hand away. You made your choice. And now you're living with it. He collapsed into sobs, his shoulders shaking, but I didn't bend. I couldn't, because forgiveness, real forgiveness, isn't just given with words. It's earned through actions. And until he understood the weight of what he had done, he didn't deserve it. Over the following weeks, I heard from people in town that he was struggling. Jobless, his reputation shattered after word spread that he had abandoned his own mother. He walked with his head down, avoiding neighbors' eyes. Even his friends distanced themselves. People respected success, but they respected family more, and he had failed both. Meanwhile, my life was different. I wasn't the quiet old woman everyone assumed anymore. My staff treated me with admiration. The community saw me as a symbol of strength, and my story became a whisper that traveled through town like wildfire. The ordinary widow turned out to be a powerhouse, and people never underestimated me again. But the most important part wasn't the money, the power, or the company. It was the lesson. My son needed to learn that love cannot be discarded, that family cannot be thrown away, that mothers are not burdens. They are the backbone of everything their children become. So I let him feel the sting of rejection, the same sting he had forced on me. I let him carry the shame, the loneliness, and the regret. I didn't forgive him because forgiveness would have erased the lesson, and this was a lesson he needed to carry forever. One evening, weeks later, I saw him again. He stood outside my office building, waiting. His eyes were hollow, his posture broken. When I approached, he whispered, "Mom, I've lost everything." I paused, my hand on the glass door. "Now you know what it feels like." I replied quietly, and I walked past him, leaving him to face the silence of his own choices. The lesson was complete. I didn't do it out of cruelty. I did it because some lessons can only be learned the hard way. He had to understand that actions have consequences, that betrayal cuts deeper than he imagined, and that respect once lost is not easily regained. And maybe one day, years from now, when the sting has truly sunk in, he'll remember this moment not with anger, but with understanding. He'll See that his mother didn't destroy him, she taught him. Because love isn't always soft. Sometimes love is the steel that forces us to grow. That was my choice, that was my lesson, and that was my final word, but little did I know. The story wasn't over. My son had a plan of his own, and what he did next would shock me more than anything before.